I was 18 years old, and all I wanted in my whole life was to be a professional musician. I mean, ideally a rock star, yeah, but if I was just making my living doing music, that was the goal. So I'm 18 years old, I'm living in Boston, I'm going to Berklee College of Music, and I'm in this band where the bass player one day in rehearsal says, "Hey man, my agent just offered me a gig that's like $75 to play at a pig show in Vermont." He rolls his eyes and he's like, "I'm not going to do it. Do you want the gig?" I'm like, "Fuck yeah, a paying gig? Oh my God, yes." So I took the gig to go up to Burlington, Vermont, and I think it was like a $58 round trip bus ticket. And I get to this pig show in Vermont. I strap my acoustic guitar on and I walk around a pig show playing music. And did that for like 3 hours, got on the bus home. And the next day, the booking agent called me up and said, "Hey, so yeah, you did a really good job at the pig show. We got good reports there. Wondering if you can come play at an art opening in Western Massachusetts. I'll pay you $75 again." "Yeah, sure." So same thing. I took like a $60 bus out to Western Massachusetts, got $75 for playing at an art opening. And the agent was there and he was impressed. And so he said, "Hey, look, I've got this circus and the previous musician just quit. So we really need somebody new. And I really like what you're doing. So there's about 3 gigs a week. I can pay you $75 a gig. They're usually Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Do you want the gig?" I said, "Hell yeah. I'm a professional musician now. This is amazing." So I said yes to everything, which is going to come up later, with the hell yeah or no thing, that I think it's really smart to switch strategies. But when you're earlier in your career, I think the best strategy is you just say yes to everything, every piddly little gig. You just never know what are the lottery tickets. So this one ended up being a real lottery ticket for me. Because as soon as I joined the circus, again, I'm 18, I had no stage experience. And after a few gigs, they said, "Hey, so the previous musician used to go out and open the show with this big theme song and get everybody up and dancing. Could you do that?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And another gig or two later, they said, "Hey, the previous musician used to close the show also with that theme song. Could you do that?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And then it was, the previous musician used to go out in between every act and get the audience to applaud and thank them and introduce the next act. Do you think you could do that? I said, "Yeah, sure." And I was really bad at it at first, but I got good eventually. I became like the ringleader MC of this whole circus, and I was 18 years old. So if you were to go to the circus, it would have looked like my show. And I did that for 10 years, from the age of 18 to 28. I did over 1,000 shows. And eventually, by the way, got paid more than $75. Eventually, I was getting like $300 a show, and it became my full-time living. And I even bought a house with the money I made playing with the circus. And then that led to all kinds of other things. So just so many huge opportunities, and 10 years of stage experience came from that one piddly little pig show that I said yes to this little thing. So yeah, the only reason I stopped doing the circus is when CD Baby started taking over my life and I had to start turning down circus gigs. But yeah, that was my life for 10 years.
What did you learn that made you better? What were the lessons learned that made the biggest difference in your performance as this MC? What were the biggest mistakes that you made early on that you corrected? Either one is fine.
Yeah, it's kind of the same answer, is that at first I was too self-conscious because I thought it was about me. Like I was going up on stage thinking that the audience was somehow judging me, Derek Sivers, as if I mattered, So I would get self-conscious of what they thought of me. And eventually, and I think it took maybe like 10 or 20 gigs. The circus was run by a husband and wife team, and Tarleton was the name of the wife. She was the one really kind of out on the gigs and leading the circus. The husband was more the booking agent. And she's the one that single-handedly gave me my confidence that I have today. Like sometimes when people ask me, why am I so confident? It's like, that's because of Tarleton. That's a longer story we get into. But anyway, Tarleton is the one that she just kept pushing me from backstage. Like, come on, you're up there acting like David Letterman. Like, don't do this whole kind of, yeah, I'm so cool. All right, everybody, here's the next act. Like, I think I was trying to be cool because I thought that people were judging me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, these people came here for a show. Go give them what they came here for. And so one time I decided to go out there and just be over the top ridiculous. I went on stage and I said, ladies and gentlemen, what you're about to see is one of the most amazing things. We have an elephant that is going to be coming from backstage. And I did this whole thing in the fast talking voice and real pizzazz to it. And the audience loved it. And I came backstage and she said, there you go. That's what people come to the circus for. So now that I've been on stage, thousands of times, this really sunk in that you get on stage to give the audience what they came there for. Or even things like this interview we're doing. This isn't necessarily for you or me. We could just hang up the phone and talk. We don't need to. But we're doing this for the listeners. So we're going to give them something that's useful to them. This isn't about me. This isn't about you. This is about them.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the biggest lesson learned. Luckily, I learned that early on when I was 18, 19. And yeah.
Seems like most of my friends who are what most people would consider successful in various respects can trace their confidence back to either or both and a specific woman and a specific coach or mentor of some type. It always comes down to one or both of those.
Oh, Tim, I've never told you about Kimo Williams.
It's a great name and I want to learn more. No, I don't know anything about.
This is so up your alley. I can't believe I've never told you this. Okay. Thanks for prodding me. I mean, you prompted me with that because you're right. It was a gorgeous woman, Tarleton, and it was a music teacher, Kimo Williams, he changed my life a year or two before I met her. Okay, so imagine this. I'm 17 years old now. I'm living in suburban Chicago, and I decide to go to Berklee College of Music because I want to be a famous musician. And just 2 or 3 months before I'm supposed to go, I see an ad in the local Chicago Tribune for music typesetting. And I'm wondering how much sheet music I'm going to have to be writing. So I call up this classified ad in the paper and I say, can I ask you some questions about music typesetting? And he said, sure. Well, why do you want to know? And I said, because I'm about to go off to Berklee College of Music in a couple months. And he said, oh, really? He said, I used to teach at Berklee College of Music. I said, you did? Do you think you can give me some tips? He said, yeah, here's my address. Come to my studio at 9 a.m. Thursday morning. See you then. And he lived way downtown Chicago in an area I'd never been to. And I'm going to do a little foreshadowing of the story.
Perfect.
Right now, because when I got married years later to the woman I met when I was sitting in Times Square with you, he was one of only 3 people I invited to the wedding. It was Tarleton from the circus, Kimo Williams, my music teacher, and my first girlfriend, Camille. Those were my only 3 guests to my wedding. And Kimo Williams told the story to my family. He said, I tell people all the time, I get all these kids that want to be famous. And I say, yep, show up at my studio at 9 a.m. And he said, nobody ever does. Nobody has their shit together to show up when I tell them to. And he said, so I'd honestly forgotten that there was this kid that called from a classified ad.
That was his way of saying no. He was no, it's just his hurdle. He was like, yeah, all right, kid, sure, here's a 7-foot hurdle. Let's see how you do.
Exactly. So he said, my doorbell rings some Thursday morning at 8:59 a.m. And I open the door and there's some long-haired teenager sitting there. And so now flipping back to first person point of view is, Kimo Williams is this large black man from Hawaii that was a musician that attended Berklee School of Music and then stayed there to teach for a while. And so what he taught me in 4 lessons got me to graduate Berklee College of Music in half the time it would take. And here was his thing. He said, the reason I wanted you to study with me for a bit, he said, I know you only have 8 weeks before you go to school. He said, I think you can graduate Berklee School of Music in 2 years instead of 4. He said, the standard pace is for chumps.
I should get a t-shirt made.
Yes, I know. This is totally Tim Ferriss stuff, right? This is I can't believe we hadn't talked about this before, that he's the one at the age of 17, 18 got me into this mentality. He said, where the standard pace is for chumps. The school has to organize its curricula around the lowest common denominator so that almost nobody is left out. So they have to slow down so that everybody can catch up. But he said, you're smarter than that, or anybody can be smarter than that if they want to be. So you can go as fast as you want. And here's how. And so he sat me down at the piano. He said, okay, what do you know about music theory? I said, well, I don't know. Let's find out. And he just asked me a few of these music questions okay, how does a major scale go? Right? Okay, show me the tritone. Do you know what a tritone is? Okay, play me a tritone in the C major scale. I'm like, okay, B and F. He said, okay, how can you take that and what other chord can you make from B and F? He said, okay, that's called the substitute chord. Now, what is a resolution? We realized, and he was just like, boom, 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 at this kind of pace. He was doing all this music theory stuff with me. It was so intense. And I was like, I had all this adrenaline like a video game. I was like, this is amazing. Okay, keep going. I said, okay, do that and this. And that was like a 2-hour lesson that went at that kind of pace. And then he dumped a bunch of homework on me. He said, okay, now go home tonight and take this big book of jazz standards. Find me all the 2/5 substitutions or 2/5 closures. Now substitute chords for that and then come back next Thursday and we'll do this again. So we did that for like 4 Thursdays in a row. And sure enough, what he taught me in 4 2-hour sessions was basically like 2 years of Berklee College of Music. He compressed it into 4 lessons.
Wow.
So that when I showed up to my first day of Berklee, I tested out of the first few years, just thanks to him. And then he even taught me a strategy. He offhand mentioned, he said, I think they might still have a rule in place where those other required courses, that you have to take to graduate, he said, I think you could pretty much just buy the books for those and then contact the department head and just take the final exam to get credit. So I did that too. So when I got there, all those required classes like, Bach counterpoint classes, I wasn't so interested in it. So I bought the book, did all the homework, approached the department head, said, can I take the final exam for this? And he said, looked at me weird and said, okay. Took the final exam and got credit without ever having to attend the class. And yeah, that's how I graduated Berklee College of Music in 2 years.
And on a related note, could you talk about, and we've talked about this a bit, but I never tire of it, relaxing for the same result? Because I think this is such a huge observation that it's incredibly important for type A personalities, or at least for me, because I have a tendency to almost want to burn the candle at both ends, to prove to myself that I'm putting forth the maximum effort. I'm leaving as little as possible to chance with certain things, but tell everybody about the bicycle experience.
Yeah, this was kind of profound. Now, granted, I didn't learn this until later, but yeah, I'd been very, very, very type A my whole life. Even before I met Kimo Williams, age of 14, it just, my friends called me the robot because they would never see me sleep or eat or relax or hang out. I just was like so focused on being the best musician I could be that I would just practice every waking minute. If I'd begrudgingly go to a party, I'd bring my guitar with me and I'd be sitting in the corner practicing my scales and arpeggios while everybody was hanging out, getting high, So yeah, I've always been very type A. And so a friend of mine got me into cycling when I was living in LA. And I lived right on the beach in Santa Monica where there's this great bike path in the sand that goes for, I think it's 25 miles in the sand, something like that. The exact number doesn't matter. But what I would do is I would go onto the bike path and I would get like head down and push it as hard as I could. I would go all the way to one end of the bike path and back and then back home. And I'd set my little timer when doing this.
Huffing and puffing, red face.
Yeah, just red face huffing it, but like just pushing it as hard as I can. Every single thrust of the leg, just. Of course, that made me quite fun if somebody was in my way on the bike path.
Sure. That guy's got places to go.
But I noticed it was always 43 minutes. I mean, if you know Santa Monica, California, the weather is about exactly the same all year round. So unless it was a surprisingly windy day, it was always 43 minutes is what it took me to go as fast as I could on that bike path. But I noticed that over time, I was starting to feel less psyched about going out on the bike path. Because just mentally, when I would think of it, it would feel like pain and hard work.
It sounds like pain and hard work.
Yeah, I mean, it was, but I guess at first that was okay. And after a while, I just felt like, I don't know, riding the bike, why don't I just hang out? So then I said, that's not cool for me to start to associate negative stuff with going on the bike ride. Why don't I just chill for once? Like, I'm just going to go on the same bike ride, but just, I'm not going to be a complete snail, but I'll go at like half of my normal pace. So yeah, I got on my bike and it was just pleasant. I just went on the same bike ride, but I was more like standing up. And I just noticed that I was looking around more. And I looked out in the ocean. I noticed there were these dolphins jumping in the ocean. And I went down to Marina del Rey to my turnaround point. And, actually it was when the breakers at Marina del Rey, there was a penguin that was flying above me. I was like, no way. I looked up, I was like, hey, a penguin. And he shit in my mouth. I was like, bleh, bleh.
Was it a penguin or a pelican?
Oh, sorry, pelican. Yes, a flying penguin above my head. That would be more amazing.
I was like, what did you take before your ride? So you had a pelican.
So sorry.
Pelican shit in your mouth. That's incredible accuracy. Was that from like, how far away was it?
Like 20 feet up. I mean,
Wow.
because I don't know if he was accurate or I was,
Yeah.
Anyway, I had such a nice time. It was just purely pleasant. There was no red face. There was no huffing and puffing. I was just cycling. It was nice. And when I got back to my usual stopping place, I looked at my watch and it said 45 minutes. And I was like, no way. How the hell could that have been 45 minutes as compared to my usual 43? It's like, there's no way. But yeah, it was right. 45 minutes. And that was like a profound lesson that I think changed the way I've approached my life ever since. It's because I realized that, I guess, what percentage of that huffing and puffing then, we could do the math at whatever, what a 93 point something percent of my huffing and puffing and all that red face and all that stress was only for an extra 2 minutes. It was basically for nothing. I mean, of course, we're not talking about me competing in something where the huffing and puffing might have been worth it. But for life, I think of all of this optimization and getting the maximum dollar out of everything and the maximum out of every second and the maximum out of every minute. And I think I just take this approach now of going like, or you could just take the lesson, take most of that lesson and apply it and be effective and be happy. But you don't need to stress about any of this stuff. And so honestly, that's been my approach ever since. I do things, but I stop before anything gets stressful.
One of the essays that you're best known for is Hell Yeah or No. And this has been extremely important for me to consistently reread or listen to. How did it come about and what is the gist of that?
There was a music conference in Australia that I had told my friend I would go with her to. It wasn't even like the conference themselves were really expecting me. It was my friend Ariel Hyatt is one of the best publicists I know. And she was speaking at that conference and asked if I would come with her as like a co-presenter in her mentor session or something. So I had said yes like 6 months before. Yeah, sure, Australia. I'm living in New York City. I'm like, yeah, sure. And then once it came close and it was like time to book the ticket, I was like, I don't really want to go to Australia right now. I'm busy with other stuff. And it was actually my friend, Amber Rubarth, who's a brilliant musician. I was on the phone with her and kind of lamenting about this. And she's the one that pointed out, she said, it sounds like, from where you're at, your decision is not between yes and no. You need to figure out whether you're feeling like, fuck yeah, or no. And I said, yeah, that's really what it comes down to, right? Because the idea is, if you're feeling anything less than like, oh, hell yeah, I would love to do that. Oh my God, that would be amazing. If you're feeling anything less than that, then just say no. Because most of us say yes to too much stuff. And then we let these little mediocre things fill our lives. And so the problem is, when that occasional big, oh my God, hell yeah thing comes along, you don't have enough time to give it the attention that you should because you've said yes to too much other little half-ass kind of stuff, right? So once I started applying this, my life just opened up because it just meant I just said no to almost everything. But then when the occasional thing came up that I was really like, you know what? That would be awesome. Then suddenly I had all the time in the world. And, people say this, I'm sure, every time people contact you, every time people contact me, they say, look, I know you must be incredibly busy. And I always think like, no, I'm not. because I'm in control of my time. I'm on top of it. Busy to me seems to imply like out of control. Like, oh my God, I'm so busy. I don't have any time for this shit. To me, that sounds like a person who's got no control of their life.
Yeah, no control and unclear priorities.
Yes, exactly. So you asked how it's applying in my life, that still just on the little tiny day-to-day level, even personal things. God, even people you meet, even, as I'm dating, You have to do the hell yeah or no approach. Or people ask you to go to events, or God, even people asking to do a phone call or anything. I think, am I really excited about that? And, almost every time the answer is no. So I say no to almost everything. And then, occasionally something will come up. Even a little surprise will be dropped in my lap, like this thing that happened just 2 months ago called the Now project, which we don't even really need to talk about. The details don't matter so much, but it was just something that popped up that seemed really interesting and people really wanted. And luckily, because I say no to almost everything, I had the time in my life to make it flourish. So for the last 6 weeks, all I did full time, 12 hours a day, was suddenly work on this brand new thing that showed up because I could, So that's to me the lovely result of taking the hell yeah or no approach to life.
So I am reading a section of this blog post that I wrote about you and the best email you ever wrote with the Japanese boxing specialist and so on. And one of the paragraphs that I put here, for those people interested, it's just the most successful email I ever wrote, but it's everywhere online. And it reads, stranger still, at its largest, Derek spent roughly 4 hours on CD Baby every 6 months. He had systematized everything to run without him. And feel free to correct that if it needs to be corrected. But assuming that's roughly true, what were some of the most important decisions or realizations that made that possible?
I love the timing for when I read 4 Hour Workweek, because it was actually just after I had done this complete delegation of everything, that it was feeling the pain from everything having to go through me. It was my business, right? 100%, no investors, no nothing. It was me. And so I hired people to help me. It was all me. So 4 years into it, it was growing. It was really taking off. I had, 20 employees, but still almost everything went through me. And it made my day kind of miserable because I'm a real introverted, focused kind of person. I love to just sit down for 12 hours and do one thing without distraction.
You're an INTJ, Myers-Briggs?
Yep.
Yeah,
Are you?
So I'm 100% INTJ.
Yeah. So I hated going to the office and being distracted every 5 minutes with my employees asking me questions. So that's what I just felt such pain about this. I hate this. That I really, literally, man, I booked a flight to Kauai, I believe. And I was going to move to Kauai and not give my employees my phone number and literally move. I don't mean take a vacation. I mean I am now going to be running, or I'm going to be the owner of CD Baby on a little island in Hawaii, and you guys just figure out your own damn problems. Because I was just having so much psychic pain about this. But then luckily, with lovely coincidence, that night that I booked the flight to Hawaii, I watched the movie Vanilla Sky. And in Vanilla Sky, Tom Cruise is the owner of this big publishing company, but he gets all caught up with these crazy women and gets too overwhelmed with his life and focusing on his own happiness or unhappiness and all that. And pretty soon his company is just wrestled away from him. And I thought, I don't want that to happen. I don't want to just plug my ears, close my eyes, run away, and have my company taken away from me. I need to deal with my problems instead of running from them. So I canceled the trip to Hawaii and went into work the next day and decided to fix this thing. So then the next time somebody asked me a question, I gathered everybody around. I said, okay, everybody, Tracy just asked me, Derek, what do we do when a guy on the phone says he wants a refund? I said, okay, everybody stop working. Everybody gather around. Okay. Tracy asked what we do if somebody wants a refund. Here's not only what we do, but here's why. Here's my philosophy. Whenever anybody wants a refund, we should always give it to them. And I would just explain not just the what to do, but the why. It was constantly communicating the philosophy to get to the core of it. And I think you mentioned this back in 4 Hour Workweek. There's almost nothing that really has to be you. You can almost get kind of AI and figure out how your brain works, how your decision-making process works, and just teach it to other people so that other people can do it. And yeah, that's what I did for every single thing that ever came my way. I would gather everybody around, explain the philosophy behind it, why we do things this way, why I'm about to say what I'm about to say, and now here's what I think we should do. Do you understand why? Now please write it down. But it was also important that I taught it multiple people, not just one, and had them write it down. And then the cool thing is, I wasn't doing the hiring anymore at the company. I had taught other people how to do the hiring. So soon my employees were doing the hiring, and then they were teaching new people how to do this thing from the book. And so that really started 4 years into the company. It was 6 months of difficult work to really make myself unnecessary. But then my girlfriend at the time decided to go to film school in LA. So I decided to follow her down there. So I moved down to LA to be with her, which was a nice symbolic way to let the company know, like, you're on your own. I'm still the owner. And in fact, so there's one little caveat to the thing where you said that I was working on CD Baby for 4 hours a year or whatever you said.
Yeah, 4 hours a 6 months.
Is that's how much time I spent doing the stuff I didn't want to be doing, right? The monotony, the bureaucracy stuff, that I had reduced down to almost nothing, like a few minutes a week. But what I was doing from 7 a.m. to midnight every single day was programming, like the future of CD Baby. And that's just the stuff that I loved doing. So it was about making my life the way I wanted it to be, working on the stuff that I wanted to be working on, and not doing the stuff I didn't.
If you could have one billboard anywhere with anything on it, what would it say?
My real answer, if I was taking that literally, is that I would remove all the billboards in the world and ensure that they were never replaced. You know, have you ever driven through India, you know?
Yeah.
It's so sad.
Well, I haven't driven, but
right.
On my way to the Calcutta ER where I spent a week, I was briefly looking out the windows.
You know, even in these small towns in Kerala, like there's almost no space that is left without advertising. So I really admire those places, like I think Vermont and Sao Paulo, Brazil, that ban billboards. But I know that wasn't really what you were asking. So my better answer is, I think I would make a billboard that would say, "It won't make you happy." And I would place it outside any big shopping mall or car dealer. So ideally, actually, I think, you know what would be a fun project is to buy and train thousands of parrots to say, "It won't make you happy. It won't make you happy." And then you let them loose in the shopping malls and superstores around the world. That's my life mission. Anybody with me? Let's do it.
What advice would you give your 30-year-old self? And place us, if you would, for where you were at 30 and what you were doing.
At 30, well, let's see. I had just started CD Baby at 30. But I think the biggest advice I would give to my younger self, or more like knowledge learned, like, hey, younger self, you should know this now, is that women like sex. Didn't know that until I was 40. I think I didn't get that. I think through, you know, like teenage movies or whatever, we're kind of taught the opposite. That's like, you know, men always want sex and women don't. I don't know why the media portrays it like that. But later I found out that's not true. But I think the more interesting answer is that my advice to my 30-year-old self would be, don't be a donkey.
And what does that mean?
Well, I meet a lot of 30-year-olds that are trying to pursue many different directions at once, but not making progress in any, right? And then, or they get frustrated that the world wants them to pick one thing because they want to do them all. And I get a lot of this frustration, like, but I want to do this and that and this and that. Why do I have to choose? I don't know what to choose. But the problem is, if you're thinking short term, then you're acting as if you don't do them all this week, that they won't happen. Mm-hmm. But I think the solution is to think long term, to realize that you can do one of these things for a few years and then do another one for a few years and then another. So what I mean about don't be a donkey is, you've probably heard the fable about, I think it's Buridan's donkey. It's a fable about a donkey that is standing halfway in between a pile of hay and a bucket of water. And he just keeps looking left to the hay or right to the water, trying to decide, hay or water, hay or water. And he's unable to decide, so he eventually falls over and dies of both hunger and thirst. So the point is that a donkey can't think of the future. If he did, he'd clearly realize that he could just go first drink the water and then go eat the hay. So my advice to my 30-year-old self is, don't be a donkey. You can do everything you want to do. You just need foresight and patience. Right? So say, like, for somebody listening, if you're 30 years old now, and say you have like 5 different things you want to pursue, well, then you can do each one of those for 10 years. And you'll have them all done by the time you're 80. You're probably going to live to be 80. So It's ridiculous it sounds ridiculous to plan to the age of 80 when you're 30, right? But it's a fact that it's probably coming, so you might as well take advantage of it. It's like, use the future. That way you can fully focus on one direction at a time without feeling conflicted or distracted, because you know that you'll get to the others in the future.
And I think you could also, just to build on that, I agree. I think most people, and this is not something I've thought up on my own, but they overestimate what they can achieve in a day or a week. So they have 20 items on their to-do list, but they underestimate what they could achieve in a year or even 2 years. And the way that, for instance, if you look at a lot of what I've done, much of which ended up being a result of accidental discoveries, but you had the book career, but then you had the angel investing started around 2007, 2008. And I treated that as a 2-year self-imposed MBA. And it was like, okay, I want to try this and really focus on it for 2 years. And I'm not going to expect to have any financial return, but just as an MBA, I'm going to sink this amount of cost into it, which was identical to Stanford Graduate School of Business at the time, and assume that the network and relationships and lessons I would learn would be worth that 2 years. And just viewing them as 2-year experiments, which I did with the TV also, which did not turn out as ideally as I would have liked, although I'm very proud of, the Tim Ferriss experiment. Podcast, same thing, right? It wasn't a 3-year commitment, but it was also not a 1 day or 1 week commitment. It was like, okay, I'm going to do this for at least 6 episodes. Maybe it takes me 6 months and then I'll correct course at that point. But yeah, I think a lot of 30-year-olds feel pressured, or younger or older for that matter, to pursue many, many things in parallel, when if you were just to tweak that slightly and make them serial, the results would be much better.
Yeah. That's a really hard lesson to learn. We can even say it right now. It's really tough. I even find that now. Yeah.
Constant challenge.